Hello everyone and welcome to the finals of the Fide Grand Prix 2022 being played in Berlin in a match between Hikaru, Nakamura and Levon Aronian. It's one of the matchups that you guys have been requesting, and basically we would enjoy seeing anyone in the finals, but Nakamura and Levon just have a very special place in our hearts, as we all know, and it's very interesting to see how Hikaru will do against such a super grandmaster and also a former member of the 2800 club, after being away from classical chess for so long. Now, so far it seems like being away from classical is good for your game, but we'll see how he deals against Levon. Hikaru has the white pieces. Let's check out the game. He opens with pawn to e4. We have e5 by Levon, knight to f3, knight to c6, and bishop to b5. Going for the Ruy Lopez, we have a6, the Morphy's defense. We have bishop to a4, and now knight to f6. We have castles and bishop to e7. The Columbus variation was on the board, but now with bishop to e7 we go into the closed Ruy Lopez. We have rook to e1, adding a defender to the pawn here, and now b5. So this is all very, very standard stuff. A lot of games in the database with this exact same lines. We have castles, h3, bishop to b7, and now d3 and d6. Again, nothing new here. We have a3, and now queen to d7, developing the queen, connecting the rooks. We have knight to c3, and now knight to d8, freeing up that c pawn, so you can push it, and also the knight is coming to e6, and from there maybe to d4 or f4, depending on what white plays. And here almost everyone plays d4 in this position. You've removed the defender of the d4 square, so naturally white will play d4 here, but Hikaru actually goes knight to h2, and it is now already, as of move 12, that we have a completely new game. So let's see how Levon continues. We have knight to e6. Now the knight can come to f4 if it so pleases. We have knight to g4, offering a trade of knights. And here Levon plays king to h8. And it's a very tricky move because, well, if Hikaru trades, then Levon might be even interested in capturing with the g pawn, and that could be very scary for both white and black. So here Hikaru does capture. He kind of wants Levon to play this, but maybe it's too risky. Next game he has the white pieces, so maybe next game he can push for more. We will just show it. The g captures and f6 can be played, and then you get the semi-open g file to be used for your rooks. You can play rook g8, maybe rook g6, bring the other rook to g8. The bishop is very nicely placed on b7. The queen already controlling this diagonal. It's a very enjoyable position, but could be also very bad for you. So instead, after knight captures an f6, Levon just recaptures with the bishop, and now queen g4. Hikaru brings the queen into the game. Rook 8 to e8 for the moment. You don't have to worry about, even though, okay, the knight can't really move because the queen hangs unless you play something like knight to c5, but for the moment, not worried about that. So rook 8 to e8, we have a4. Now Hikaru strikes on the queen side. He wants to play something like captures, maybe bring the rook over to a7, and now b4. Levon wants to keep the queen side closed. We have knight to e2, and now queen to d8, unpinning. So now the knight can move wherever, pretty much. We have c3 now, challenging the b4 pawn, also offering a trade here, so you can execute d4 in the future. B captures on c3. We have b captures and g6 now, and g6 is a very important move. You want to be able to bring your bishop back to g7. Also, maybe you will be interested in bringing the knight here and then to f4. Maybe you can just bring the knight to f4 right away, but also you are preventing the white knight from going something like knight g3 to f5. So all in all, it's a very useful move. And now you could capture the knight here. That's perfectly fine, because the knight could be a scarier piece than the bishop on b3. Also, some other ideas are possible. But here we have bishop to d5. Very interesting by Hikaru, attacking the bishop on b7, and Levon very happily trades, as he will double up Hikaru's e pawn to a d pawn. So the bishop captures, pawn captures, and now knight to c5. Not going just for the d3 pawn, also knight to b3 might be interesting in some lines, but Hikaru invites this, and he plays bishop to h6. So here Hikaru is offering the d3 pawn for some very interesting counterplay. And of course, Levon could decline this. He could play just bishop to g7. Then we could see some like captures, and it could be very interesting for Levon. If, let's say, queen c4, you put some pressure on black's pawns here, we can just play e4. So that's also very nice for black, as the knight now and the rook control the e4 pawn. Not all that much you can play here. Of course, pushing d4 results in knight to d3, so that's also good for black. So it's an option, but Levon decides to grab the pawn. He says, all right, I will take your pawn, and then we'll see where this game goes. We have bishop captures on f8, knight captures on e1, rook captures, and of course rook captures on f8. So some pieces have been traded off. Levon is now up a pawn, and Hikaru goes queen to c4. Now puts pressure on the a6 pawn, and Levon says, all right, I was planning on defending this, so queen to a8, and now he offers the c7 pawn for the d5 pawn, but this would be better for black, so maybe not the greatest of ideas, but if you don't play that, what do you play? Hikaru plays rook to b1, makes sense, it's the only open file on the board, and of course Levon offers a trade, rook to b8, also activating the rook, rook to b4, now saying, okay, I would very much enjoy if you captured on b4, so I can improve my pawn structure here, and later on play something like b5. So here Levon could really consider a move like a5, and force a trade on the b file, and then play against maybe the isolated a pawn, but he first goes king to g7, and okay, Hikaru goes knight g3. He wants to play knight to e4, and well, this will improve the position of his knight immensely. So here h5, Levon says, I'm not worried about this, I have ideas of a5, I have ideas of h4, so it's you know, a very dynamic position. So knight to e4, attacking the bishop here, and Levon just brings the bishop back. Bishop to d8, and now, as Levon did not play a5 for so long, Hikaru now plays a5, and it looks a little bit dangerous because, well, the pawn can maybe easily be attacked, but not really. You never want to push c6 or c5. It's just very ugly. Allowing this pawn to become a pass pawn would be incredibly dangerous. You could, however, try rook to c8. Avoid the rook trade altogether, put the rook on the c file, and then push the c pawn. But Levon has different ideas. He plays rook, queen to a7. And now we have g3 by Hikaru. We have f5 now, grabbing more space on the king side, attacking the knight, knight to d2, and only now rook captures on b4. Hikaru is very happy with this recent development. We have c captures on b4. Now with b5, Hikaru is very sure that a pass pawn will be created, either by black capturing on b5 or just by capturing on a6. Then this pawn becomes a pass pawn. So here Levon strikes with e4, and now knight to b3. Now the knight can come to d4, and then maybe to c6 or e6 could be very, very dangerous. So bishop to f6, of course not allowing this. We are taking away that square from the white knight. And now king to g2, just improving the position. And now we have h4. So trying to bust open the position here, and Hikaru captures this because it's the best move, and for the moment black cannot recapture this. Recapturing here would in fact lose the game for Levon, but it's a very nice line, so we're going to show it. If Levon captures on h4, then we have this beautiful queen trade. Queen d4 check. Now a queen trade is forced. You don't have any options here. Captures, and there is no defense against b5. That's why this 2-1 advantage on the queen side is just incredibly strong, even though there's a backward c pawn, which kind of makes it hard for you to do something with the b pawn, but still it just works by force here. Whatever black plays, we're just going to push the pawn, and after captures a6, and the pawn is unstoppable. Whatever you do, we're just going to advance the pawn. You are far too late to stop the pawn. So instead, after g captures on h4, first a nice king to f7, and now we have h5. Now Hikaru says, all right, if you want to recapture, you will mess up your own pawn structure. So g captures on h5, and now Hikaru plays b5, and with this b5 pawn push, he creates a pass pawn. So e3, Levon needs to get some counterplay very quickly, and now comes f4. Securing some squares here, and also the king will try to stop the pawn. Maybe you can play king f1 or f3 and followed by king to e2, but time is very low on the clock. It's already moved 39, so we still need to make one more move to reach time control, and Hikaru is already below 1 minute, whereas Levon is closer to some 10 minutes on the clock. So Hikaru needs to be very careful, and Levon plays queen to b8, which is very interesting. He gives Hikaru an option here. Okay, you're incredibly low on time. Do you want to capture here and create a passed pawn? I mean, it's a free pawn. Maybe you should capture it. The problem is there's just not enough time for Hikaru to calculate this, even though he calculates extremely fast. But if you capture the pawn, then you allow this queen to g8 check. And now you have problems. If you go king to h1, well, king to h1 is good, but let's say you go king to f1, then queen to g3 threatens checkmate, attacks the h3 pawn, which comes with check, is just very ugly. So you're going to have to play king to h1, but still we're going to play queen g3, and you do not want to have this position. If queen f1 to guard everything, we just play e2. That's how we break through. Queen captures on b3 now. You're down a knight, and all in all, with best play, this should be a draw, but still. It's a lot to calculate with just needing to make one move to reach time control and with less than a minute on the clock. So Hikaru just played king to f1. He stepped away from the g file, so this doesn't come with check. Also, you are very close to stopping that pawn. And now, okay, a captures on b5. This is move 40. Both players have reached it, and now additional time is received. So queen to c6. Hikaru has a passed pawn. Now, if he can play a6, queen to b7, and a7, a8, of course, the game is over. So Levon cannot allow this. He plays e2 with check. He wants to give up this pawn to be able to get the queen into the game with tempo, and you don't really gain anything. If you play king to e1, if you don't capture it, we can play queen e7, and the white is not in time to play a6 because there's just queen to g1, and you're not, escaping the checks. So here you might as well capture the pawn. So king captures on e2, queen to a7, and now a6. Of course, we have to try. Queen to g1 by Levon. Now queen captures on c7 with check. King to g6. Now knight to d2. The knight is a very nice defender here next to the king, so the black queen will not have an easy time delivering all the checks. So queen to h2 check, king to d1, now queen captures on f4, grabbing this pawn, so now the f5 pawn becomes a passed pawn, but now a7 by Hikaru. So how can Levon prevent, just losing the game? Bishop to g5, now Levon threatens checkmate, and Hikaru has to deal with this. Now comes queen to a5, the only move to stop checkmate. And now Levon plays b4. Now the queen no longer blocks checkmate, so you are threatening checkmate once again. Queen to a2, defending against checkmate, and now even b3. Now, again, if queen captures, we just checkmate the white king. So what can you do? You could capture the pawn with the knight, but this is, again, very tricky. If knight captures on b3, queen f1 check. Look at the queen and bishop just working very nicely together. King c2, queen to f2 check, king to b1, and now we can play queen e1 check, king b2, and now queen e2 check. And it doesn't seem like you can checkmate the white king. For example, king to a3, but then we get a nice repetition. Queen a6 check, king back, queen here, and so on. So also a lot of other moves that the white can play will also result in a perpetual. So knight captures on b3 isn't all that much. So queen to a5, just guarding the knight, and still, okay, the knight prevents the queen from coming to f1. But now Levon doesn't really have much of an option here. He plays queen to e3. He allows Hikaru to bring a second queen into the game, but he will get his queen to g1 check-in with the pawn covering the c2 square. This is now all very, very clear. So Hikaru does bring the queen into the game. It's the best move. Queen g1 check with king to e2, queen to e3 with check, and king to d1. Not a lot you can play. King to f1 is also possible, but it doesn't really do all that much. You can try it, but still. You will not be able to escape this. Even queen captures on h3, and again, it's still going to be a perpetual. So he doesn't want to lose this game because it's very easy to make a mistake in a position like this. So here just king d1, queen g1 check, king to e2, queen e3 check, and it was in this position on move 54 that Hikaru and Levon agreed to a draw, as there is nothing more to be done here. So a very, very interesting fighting game in the first clash in the finals of the Fide Grand Prix. We'll see what happens in the comeback match, where Levon will have the white pieces, and he will of course do everything in his power to win the game with white. Will Hikaru be able to stop it, and will we see tie breaks in the finals? That's the game. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Really a wonderful start to the finals. I would like to thank David Kimura, Medo, Francis Air, the emoji pillow on my couch, and Mr. Hoodie Guy for your contribution to my channel. Thank you a lot. I really appreciate it. As usual, you can check 2 of my previous videos here. Thank you all for watching, and I will see you soon, continuing the coverage of the finals of the FIDE Grand Prix until it finishes. So thank you all. I will see you soon, and have an excellent rest of your day.